You don't chase attraction, you become it. The moment you stop trying to impress, that's when people start noticing you, especially women. Most people spend their entire lives seeking validation from friends, from family, from society, and especially from people they're attracted to. It's almost like we've been programmed to believe that being liked equals being worthy. But the truth is, the more you chase validation, the more it runs away from you. When you seek constant approval, you give away your power. Every compliment you crave, every piece of attention you beg for becomes a tiny chain that keeps you trapped in other people's opinions. And what's worse, you start to forget who you truly are without that validation. You start performing instead of living, pleasing instead of growing, existing instead of being. Attraction, real, deep, lasting attraction, doesn't come from how much you try to impress someone. It comes from how comfortable you are with yourself when you don't have to impress anyone at all. The moment you stop seeking, you shift from needing energy to owning energy. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, do I like who I am right now? That's the moment everything begins to change, because when you're not chasing approval, you become grounded, calm, and unshakable. People can feel that. It's magnetic. You don't even have to talk much. Your presence speaks louder than any pickup line or clever word ever could. That's what being means. It means existing in your truth without apology. It means standing tall even if nobody claps for you. It means walking into a room not to be noticed, but because you belong there. When you embody that kind of quiet confidence, others naturally lean in to know more about you. Most people confuse confidence with noise. They think being confident means being the loudest in the room, showing off, dominating conversations, or trying to be funny all the time. But the loudest person in the room is often the most insecure. The man who truly understands his worth doesn't need to broadcast it. His energy, his calmness, his focus, they do the talking for him. When you stop seeking attention, you give yourself permission to relax into your own rhythm. You move slower, but with more certainty. You talk less, but what you say carries weight. You stop reacting to everything because your peace becomes more important than anyone's approval. And that peace, that self-assured stillness, is exactly what draws people to you. When you're seeking, you're always waiting for someone to notice you, waiting for someone to text back, waiting for someone to tell you that you matter. But when you start being, you stop waiting and start creating. You build your own world, you invest in your own growth, and you fill your time with purpose instead of desperation. You begin to glow from within, not because someone finally saw your worth, but because you did. You stop living like a beggar for attention and start living like a king of your own reality. And that's when everything changes, not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. Because once you realize you never needed to seek approval in the first place, you start living from a place of inner power, not outer need. One of the biggest reasons so many people struggle with attraction is because they focus too much on being seen instead of being driven. They spend hours thinking about how to look more appealing, how to say the right thing, how to stand out, or how to get noticed. But very few spend time asking, what am I actually building? Or what do I stand for? When your main goal in life becomes to attract attention, you end up living a shallow existence where your worth depends on how others respond to you. Attention is addictive, but it's temporary. It gives a momentary high, the thrill of someone noticing you, the excitement of a compliment, the rush of being admired, but it never lasts. Once it fades, you're left searching for your next fix, like someone trying to fill a void that can never stay full. Purpose, on the other hand, gives you something attention never can: direction. It gives meaning to your days, structure to your chaos, and clarity to your actions. When you're living with purpose, you stop chasing people because you're too busy chasing your goals. You don't have time to impress anyone when you're busy improving yourself. You're not glued to your phone waiting for validation when your energy is invested in something bigger than yourself. And the irony is that's when you actually become more attractive, because nothing draws people in like someone who knows where they're going. A man or woman with purpose walks differently. They talk differently. Their eyes hold a different kind of fire, not the desperate spark of wanting attention, but the steady flame of inner drive. You can see it in their posture, their focus, the way they carry themselves. They don't need to shout to be heard because their energy already speaks for them. The world today glorifies visibility more than value. People think that being popular is the same as being powerful, that having followers means having purpose, but attention fades the moment the crowd turns away. Purpose stays, even when nobody's watching. The person who seeks attention bends with every opinion. They change their style, their beliefs, their actions just to fit in. The person who follows purpose stands firm no matter who approves or not. That strength is what creates real magnetism. People sense when you're living for something real, and they can't help but be drawn to it. It's rare, it's refreshing, and it's real. When your life has purpose, you become self-contained. You don't chase validation, you generate it from within. Every morning you wake up with something to work toward, something that excites you, challenges you, and reminds you that your worth doesn't come from being wanted, but from being useful. You begin to respect yourself differently because you're not wasting energy on things that don't build you. You stop trying to prove yourself to others and start proving yourself to your own standards. And slowly, without even realizing it, people begin to respect you too. Not because you demanded their attention, but because you earned their admiration through consistency, passion, and growth. That's the difference between living for attention and living for purpose. One fades when the spotlight turns off, and the other keeps burning even in the dark. Confidence and arrogance often look similar from the outside, but they couldn't be more different at their core. Confidence is quiet strength. Arrogance is loud insecurity, pretending to be power. The problem is that many people confuse the two. They think being confident means being dominant, being the center of attention, talking over others, or constantly proving their worth. But that's not confidence, that's fear dressed up as pride. True confidence doesn't need to prove itself because it already knows what it's worth. It doesn't need validation, applause, or comparison. A confident person can walk into a room without demanding to be noticed because they carry a calm, grounded presence that naturally draws attention. Arrogance walks in and says, "Look at me." Confidence walks in and says, "I'm good either way." That difference changes everything about how people perceive you. Confidence comes from self-awareness. It's built on understanding your strengths and weaknesses without denial or exaggeration. You know where you shine, but you also know where you still need to grow. Arrogance, on the other hand, is built on insecurity and fear of being exposed. An arrogant person can't handle being wrong because their self-worth depends on always appearing right. They talk more than they listen, they interrupt to dominate, and they belittle others just to feel taller. But the person who is truly confident doesn't need to push anyone down to stand tall. They don't feel threatened by someone else's success because they know it doesn't take away from their own. They can admire others without jealousy, and they can take criticism without crumbling. That level of self-assurance is rare, but when you develop it, people can feel it instantly. Real confidence doesn't shout, it radiates. It's in your posture, your tone, your stillness. It's in the way you handle pressure without losing your cool. When you're confident, you don't need to force conversations or prove you belong. You simply exist comfortably in your space. You listen more because you don't fear being unheard. You speak when necessary because your words carry weight. You're not chasing validation. You're focused on expressing truth. That's why people gravitate toward confident individuals. They feel safe around them. There's stability, not chaos. Calmness, not competition. Confidence says, I'm enough. Arrogance screams, I have to be better than you to matter. Confidence also allows humility to exist alongside strength. You can be proud of who you are and still recognize that you're a work in progress. You can lead without controlling, teach without belittling, and win without bragging. Arrogance destroys connection because it's rooted in ego, but confidence builds connection because it's rooted in authenticity. People trust those who don't need to pretend. They open up to those who don't judge or compete. And when you carry yourself with that kind of balance, sure of who you are but aware of your humanity, you stand out without even trying. You inspire respect without demanding it. Because true confidence is not about walking into a room thinking you're better than everyone else. It's about walking in without needing to compare yourself to anyone at all. In a world where everyone reacts instantly, where anger, jealousy, and insecurity are displayed like emotions on a public stage, emotional control has become one of the rarest and most powerful qualities a person can possess. Emotional control doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you master how you respond. It's about staying centered when everything around you tries to pull you off balance. When you can remain calm under pressure, when you don't let people's words dictate your mood, and when you can observe your emotions instead of being consumed by them, you radiate a kind of strength that others can't help but notice. Calm energy doesn't need to demand attention. It commands it. Because in a noisy world full of chaos and overreaction, stillness becomes magnetic. People are drawn to those who can maintain composure when everyone else is losing control. The truth is, emotional control is a sign of maturity. It shows you've lived enough, learned enough, and disciplined yourself enough to understand that not every situation deserves your reaction. Most people let emotions control them like waves. One moment they're confident, the next they're filled with doubt. One comment ruins their whole day. One rejection destroys their self-worth. But when you learn to regulate your emotions, you stop being at the mercy of others. You no longer hand people the remote control to your inner peace. You decide what gets to affect you and what doesn't. That's a different level of freedom. It allows you to move through life with quiet power, not because you're emotionless, but because you've learned to feel deeply without being ruled by those feelings. Calm energy is not laziness or indifference. It's strength under control. It's like standing in the middle of a storm, yet never losing your footing. You can express anger without exploding, handle disappointment without collapsing, and face conflict without aggression. That kind of balance is rare and it's deeply attractive. When you stay calm, people trust you more. They see stability in you, something reliable and grounded. Women, especially, are drawn to men who possess emotional steadiness because it signals safety and confidence. When everyone else gets triggered and starts to panic, the calm person becomes the anchor. Their silence carries more weight than another person shouting. Their patience communicates more power than someone else's anger. Learning emotional control also builds self-respect. You start realizing how much energy you used to waste reacting to things that didn't deserve your attention. You stop fighting battles that don't matter and start focusing that energy on growth, purpose, and peace. You begin to choose your words more carefully, not to please others, but to protect your own energy. And as you develop calmness, your perspective changes. What once felt urgent now feels trivial. What once made you angry now barely shakes you. That shift transforms you from reactive to responsive, from anxious to composed. You move through the world at your own pace, guided not by impulse, but by clarity. And people can sense it immediately. Your presence feels different, your energy feels stable, and your silence begins to speak louder than your emotions ever could. Respect is one of the most underrated forms of attraction, yet it's the foundation on which every genuine connection is built. Most people mistake interest for attachment and attention for love. They believe that constantly checking in, always being available, and doing everything to please someone will win their heart. But what it really does is communicate neediness. And neediness is the opposite of respect. Neediness says, I need you to validate me. Respect says, I value you, but I value myself too. The difference is subtle yet powerful. When you operate from neediness, every action comes from fear. Fear of being ignored, fear of rejection, fear of losing someone before you've even had them. But when you come from a place of respect, your actions come from strength. You understand that attraction can't be forced, that genuine interest grows naturally, and that no one owes you affection just because you gave them attention. Respect means giving others space to be themselves. It means understanding that people have their own lives, their own pace, and their own choices. You don't try to control them or demand constant validation. You don't chase them when they pull away or beg for their attention when they're distant. Instead, you hold your ground, you stay composed, and you allow things to flow naturally. That energy speaks volumes, because when you respect someone's space, you show them that you're confident enough not to force connection. You communicate that you are not desperate for their presence. You choose it, but you don't depend on it. That calm confidence becomes magnetic. People are drawn to those who respect boundaries, not those who try to break them in the name of love or interest. Neediness, on the other hand, is heavy. It suffocates the very attraction it tries to create. When you constantly seek reassurance, when you can't go a few hours without validation, or when your happiness depends on someone's response, you're not giving love. You're seeking emotional survival. You're asking someone else to fill a void that only self-respect can fill. And that kind of dependence pushes people away because it signals insecurity. Respect comes from wholeness. Neediness comes from emptiness. When you respect yourself, you stop trying to convince others of your worth. You start moving with quiet confidence, knowing that the right person will appreciate you for who you are, not for how much effort you put into being noticed. When you treat people with respect, you naturally create balance in your relationships. You listen without trying to control the outcome, you care without losing yourself, and you love without turning it into obsession. You don't measure your value by how much someone gives you in return, because your sense of worth doesn't depend on them. You can give attention without expectation, affection without attachment, and kindness without desperation. That balance is rare and it's powerful, because respect builds trust, and trust builds attraction. People are drawn to those who can care deeply without losing their independence. They want to be around someone who doesn't need them to feel complete, but chooses to share their completeness. That's what separates a fleeting crush from a lasting connection. Not how much you chase, but how much you respect, both yourself and the other person. In a world obsessed with appearances, filters, and performances, authenticity has become one of the rarest and most attractive qualities anyone can have. Everywhere you look, people are pretending to be more confident than they feel, pretending to be happier than they are, pretending to be someone they think others will like. But the problem with pretending is that it always has an expiration date. You can only keep up a performance for so long before the truth reveals itself. And when it does, people can feel it instantly. Authenticity, on the other hand, never fades because it doesn't need effort to maintain. When you're real, genuinely real, your energy carries a calm assurance that can't be faked. You don't need to exaggerate your life, your success, or your personality to be noticed because being authentic already makes you stand out in a world full of masks. Authenticity means being comfortable in your own skin, not because you think you're perfect, but because you've accepted that you're not. It's the courage to be honest about who you are, what you believe, and what you want, even when it's not what others expect from you. Most people hide behind polished versions of themselves because they're afraid of being rejected for their truth. They edit their personalities, dilute their opinions, and suppress their quirks just to fit into what's considered attractive or likable. But real connection doesn't come from perfection. It comes from honesty. The people who truly belong in your life are drawn not to the version of you that performs, but to the version that feels real, raw, and unfiltered. When you stop pretending, you make space for genuine relationships, the kind built on understanding, not illusion. Being authentic also means embracing your flaws with confidence instead of shame. Everyone has insecurities, mistakes, and scars, but authenticity turns those imperfections into strength. When you're honest about your struggles, you become relatable. When you share your lessons instead of hiding your failures, you become inspiring. People respect authenticity because it feels human. It's refreshing in a world where so many chase image over substance. You can sense when someone is real, in their voice, their words, their presence. There's no hidden agenda, no manipulation, no desperate need for approval, just truth. That truth makes you trustworthy. It builds comfort, respect, and eventually attraction because authenticity communicates something powerful. You are grounded enough to be yourself, even when it's risky. Pretending might attract attention, but authenticity attracts loyalty. The people who are drawn to your true self are the ones who stay, not because of what you give them, but because of who you are. When you stop chasing validation and start living truthfully, you begin to glow differently. You laugh louder, move freer, and connect deeper. You stop worrying about being liked and start focusing on being real. That's where confidence lives, not in trying to be someone better, but in showing up as yourself, unapologetically, in every moment.